everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Teachers of Tomorrow's Myth. My name is Agnes Esther and I'm your host for the day. Tomorrow's Myth Foundation is on the mission to transform education by elevating teaching, by building the skills, motivation, self-confidence and social capital of teachers and preparing them with the latest in education. The foundation hopes to inspire a new generation of students to view teaching as a preferred career choice. Trauma and abuse can have long-lasting effect on individuals' mental health. It have a profound impact on individuals' mental well-being, often leading to anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. To help us understand more about this topic, today we have Vinya Sankaran Vasu joining us. Vinya Sankaran Vasu has extensive experience working in general and special education in the United States and India spanning 22 years. She's an award-winning principal from the state of California and has created several programs to serve children with special needs. She's worked in India in a national role in pre-service teacher preparation for special education and extensively with Tamil Nadu State Department of Education to improve outcome-based educational practices in the state. Ms. Vinya is the founder of Fingerprints Learning Collective. Fingerprints Learning Collective was created to discover potential in every human being through better education practice and support programs for parents, teachers, and children. We're so glad to have her on the show today. Welcome, Vinya ma'am, to the podcast.
Thank you.
Ma'am, how are you doing?
Very well, Agnes. Thank you.
Ma'am, so my first question is, can you explain what special education is?
Sure. So special education is about ensuring that every child is able to access the curriculum and is able to access the learning opportunities that are provided. So special education is really about making sure that we provide exclusive and learning opportunities that match the needs of every child.
Mm-hmm. All right.
So the usual conception is, that special education is not general education. Actually, special education is general education, ensuring that it's basically general education for children who need it, if that makes sense.
Yes, that do. So how do you define the true inclusion in the classroom, and what are some common misconceptions about inclusive practice?
So inclusion is ensuring that every child has access to learning opportunities in a classroom. So making sure that if there is a classroom of say 12 children or 20 children, that every child is able to access and understand what is being taught to them. So that is inclusion. And I think the second part of your, answering the second part of your question, it's ensuring that everybody has access, equal opportunities, and ensuring that whatever is being offered to them, the child is able to understand and learn.
All right. So I did give a very small introduction about what you do, but can you tell us more about your work in promoting inclusive practice in Indian classrooms? And what are some of the biggest challenges you have faced in this work, and how have you worked to overcome that?
Sure. So, I basically went to the US to study about special ed because I started my career here after doing my B.Sc and B.Ed. So my B.Sc and B.Ed was a very integrated course. We could either choose I did special education and physics. So the idea was you could become a special education teacher or you could become a general education teacher. They gave us that choice, So then the first job I took up was as a special ed teacher for a school here in Bangalore. And it was, after 4 years of studying, I take up the job. I had 20 students in my classroom. No, actually I started off with 9. The age group was between 7 and 27 years. My youngest was 7 years old. My oldest was 27 years old. And they had very diverse needs. So I wasn't prepared to handle those children. I didn't know what to do. The 4 years of my own studies had not really prepared me to handle my own kids. So that was a very disturbing thing, right? You spend 4 years studying and then you try to teach and you're feeling like you're not able to support your kids. So that's when I decided to go to the US to study. And I chose Kansas, the University of Kansas. It's the best in the US for special ed. So I went to study there. I went on to work there for 12 years. I was a founding principal, worked in many different school districts. So did many different things, but the idea was always to come back here and to kind of, take all the learning that I got from there, the experience I got from there, and to build something here. So that's how I came back. And after coming back here, I worked in different roles. I used to volunteer in government schools in Wayanad. I worked in the national level for RCI, the Rehabilitation Council of India. I worked with Tamil Nadu. I did many different things to figure out how can I best kind of use my expertise and skills to support the Indian education system. So what I noticed is while working at the policy level, um, I was feeling like I was, making impact, but I couldn't really see that translating into the classroom. So that's when I thought, okay, maybe I should start volunteering and doing more grassroots level work. That's when I had moved to Wayanad. And I think a lot of our challenge is we're not really equipped to meet the diverse needs of all our learners. We're not really, in a systemic way, I don't think we've prepared our teachers to address the different learning needs of our students. So that's one big challenge that we face. And the other is there's a lot of work we need to do in pre-service teacher preparation programs. I think we don't do enough in our pre-service programs to equip the teachers in doing the kind of work that is needed. I mean, I am one of those teachers, right? The 4 years that I learned was not enough for me to do what I wanted to do with my kids. So there are many challenges like that, but things are changing now with, the policy changes that are happening at the government level. So change is slowly and surely happening.
That's a great observation, ma'am. So my next question is, what are some specific steps that schools can take to be more inclusive, both in terms of their policies and their classroom practices?
So the first thing is we have to have a vision that every child should be able to learn from a school. And we have to build a culture that supports it. So what happens is if you usually, when you look at many schools, when we look at children with special needs coming in, or say children from, let's say a low socioeconomic status, what happens is, I think it's just a few families that are advocating for it, or a few teachers that are advocating for it. It needs to become the consistent, unified message of the school. It needs to be built into the vision of the school that we are here to promote and support all learners. It starts there. So the first step is building a vision. The second step is building a culture that promotes the vision. So how do you build a culture that promotes the vision? You have a lot of events that kind of promote that message. You have parent-teacher meetings that absolutely advocate for equal opportunities for all students, because you don't want to make it seem like you're doing a favor for one or two children by giving them an admission. It has to be the school's vision that everybody agrees with, and that becomes kind of the watchword for the school. That is what the school stands for. That is what the board stands for. That is what the teachers stand for. And not just the teachers, right? Even everyone from the nanny to the school driver to the custodian, everybody speaks the same language of equal opportunity. So it starts from the very, like the minute micro level, and even students have to be speaking that. Even students should be taught, we are here to promote learning for all, regardless of what differences there are. So starting from instructional practices for children to having practices for the workers to having meetings for teachers, everyone is speaking the same message of learning for all.
Great. So in your experience, what are the biggest shortcomings in the Indian education system when it comes to promoting inclusive practice? Like, what changes need to be made at the systematic level to better support teachers and students with diverse needs?
I think the first is somewhere we have this, mindset of us versus the other. I don't know if every child deserves this. It shouldn't be that, that child has a problem and that child should go to a different school. I was a principal of an international school here for some time. I did many different things when I came back, because I was trying to figure out where I could best support and use my expertise. So we actually had a parent who walked in and wanted to withdraw her child because we had given admission for a child with special needs in that school. So, it's surprising, right? At this day and age, that educated parents would think that way, and her fear was that that child's needs would affect her own child. So I think at a very minute level, there's a lot of sensitization that needs to happen. That people don't really understand what special needs are, and people don't know that, one child's needs is not going to affect somebody else's. So that very basic sensitization needs to start happening. That's one. That needs to happen for parents, for teachers, like I was saying, for the school workers, for everyone, at a worker level. But it also needs to start happening for the students. So having classes where children can understand differences in each other. And this is not just about disability. This is about any kind of difference. Low socioeconomic status, ethnicity, minority, right? Like there are so many divisions. So being able to talk about all that and giving children that sensitization and awareness. I think it really starts there. And I think that's really where we miss it sometimes. So there was this other school I went to in Wayanad. I wanted to volunteer with this government school, and I remember speaking to the principal, and I said, I would love to do some programs for your school. What can I do with them? And she immediately said, yeah, you can do something with our SC/ST kids. She said that, So language is one very important thing. So how do we are we bringing in the difference in the way we speak? Are we creating the difference in the way our practices are? So really looking at all that, and also bringing in the element of self-reflection. Somewhere, I don't know if we are giving enough time to reflect on our own practices and kind of introspecting, are we going in the right direction?
Absolutely. Uh, yeah, so now I'm just trying to understand a little bit more. So, how can teachers be better equipped to create inclusive classrooms, particularly when it comes to working with students from marginalized community? What kind of trainings or resources are most effective in supporting teachers in this work?
So the first thing is, right, I mean, I know I'm kind of repeating the same thing, but this is an important message. The first thing is understanding that education is a fundamental right of every learner. We're not doing anyone a favor by teaching them. It is their fundamental right to receive education, and it is our fundamental responsibility to give it. That is the vocation. That is what teaching is about. Teaching is about ensuring, if I'm teaching a class, and if I have even one student who didn't understand what I taught, that means I haven't done my job right. That is not on the student, that is on me as a teacher. So that responsibility, that sense of that commitment and that understanding, that is the basic understanding first. I think what happens sometimes is we think, oh, the child is not able to learn because the child has a problem. But teaching is about ensuring that I understand the right teaching practices and teach in a way that the child understands, right? It's completely flipping that equation, taking the onus on myself as a teacher and ensuring that I am doing everything I can to provide that basic fundamental right to that child. So the first step I would say is really inculcating that belief, right? That sense of responsibility and duty, that's the first. The second is, it's not just on the teachers. I am one of those teachers who used to get really overwhelmed because I wanted to do a good job, but hey, what do you do when you have so many meetings and trainings and when you're getting pulled in so many different directions and when you have to do paperwork? So the whole community kind of needs to support the teachers in the sacred work. And I don't know if it really happens. In schools, maybe they're getting pulled in many different directions. Maybe they're going for many different duties. So is the school building a culture of supporting the teacher? So when I worked in Oakland, this is, when I was working with children who were going through mental abuse, I had 2 assistant teachers in the classroom, and they did an amazing job of ensuring that I was able to teach. So they would always tell me, Ms. Vinya, you just focus on teaching. Don't worry about anything else. We will take care of the behavior issues. We will take care of all the problems. You just focus on doing the teaching. That is the kind of support teachers need, so they can then focus on teaching. But I think what happens many times is when they get pulled in many different directions, they're not able to focus on that. Just teaching takes a lot of work, making sure that the pre-assessment happens and post-assessment happens and lessons happen. So building a culture, changing our fundamental attitude about teaching, and supporting teachers in doing the work.
Great. Ma'am, you also, shared an incident about a parent removing their kid from the school because of another kid having a disability. So what advice would you give to parents or caregivers who want to advocate for more inclusive practice in their child's school, and what step can they take to help create a more inclusive environment for their child and other students?
So I think the first thing is understanding. Everyone needs to understand their rights and responsibilities, right? I don't want to say that I want a parent to be an advocate, because I think there's a very fine line between being an advocate and being an inclusive participatory member in the whole teaching community, right? Because when you say advocate, I feel like it becomes this contentious thing of us versus them. And that is not what we want. We all are in this together. We have to do this stupendous work together. So how can we work together? How can we understand what is needed? How can we support as parents? Because parents can really support a school in building better practices, playing a very active part in the PTA meetings, being part of the advisory board, and kind of be part of the problem solving, not in blaming or pointing fingers. Be part of the meetings, play a very proactive role, talk to the principal, talk to the teachers, maybe build an advisory group, give them the support that is needed so everyone is in it together.
Got it, ma'am. So finally, any last words, a key message for all the teachers who are associated with Tomorrow Smith Foundation?
I would say reflection and introspection are the most powerful teaching practices that we need to kind of, teaching is an ongoing practice. And I think somewhere, we tend to think, okay, I've done my degrees and I got a job and, and I think we are all in it because we want the best for the children. So making it an ongoing practice and building a teaching community where people are coming together and talking about their teaching practices. So you're not just having school teacher meetings to discuss announcements and school events, where you're having focused teacher meetings to talk about how can we improve learning for our children, where do we need to, do better, and what are some practices we can learn from each other. So really building a professional community within a school where people are sitting and having meetings about teaching and learning, not about school logistics and events. If you usually notice what happens in schools is we spend more time doing the latter, right? Like we speak more about the logistics and events when we should really be coming together to talk about how do we improve teaching and learning, how do we support each other, and that I think that is where our work is in improving our practice and our vocation.
That's a very thoughtful message, ma'am. Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am. So, are there any last-minute thoughts you want to share with us before closing the podcast?
Sure. I want to go back to what I told you earlier. People tend to think that general education and special education are different. It's not. Special education is part of general education. We need to ensure that every child receives general education, and special education is just a way of making sure that they do. So if we can remember that, then I think that would be a wonderful way to promote learning for all.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you very much for coming on the show and sharing your passion for inclusion. It's an inspiring and important work that you do, and we really appreciate your contribution to our podcast. So that's it, everyone. If this episode made you think deeper about inclusion, please share it across. Subscribe to our channel and follow us on our social media for updates on what's new at Tomorrow Smith Foundation. The links are right there in the description. See you in the next episode. Thank you and have a nice day.